So yeah, I think a lot of like what I've been up to is just it's been creating and curating. It's really been the entire process. It's remarkable how fast the AI space has been able to like become a useful tool in a lot of ways, even faster than sometimes the imagination can keep up with. The AI has like moved from like, oh, let's try to create something that is a facsimile of what an artist or what a visionary might be able to create. And it's going to do it in a way that's like, oh, it's sort of representative of what I imagined, right? Like someone trying to copy a Dali painting or something.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's literally just moved into an advanced prototyping, advanced creation and creativity tool where it actually feeds your imagination in like a feedback loop.
Dude, this is nuts because this one that you have pulled up right here, it feels almost like a Shellz Orb token. Like it's done in the style of Shellz Orb.
Yeah.
With a little bit of depth of field we have playing here. You see like the arm is a little bit out of focus at the bottom and a blurry background, which, we don't really have anything like that in the collection, but it's very much in the style. And I've said before on these videos, like the Shellz Orb style has a lot to do with detail and also with, the entire artwork has grain on it.
Yeah.
Right? So it gives it this kind of like soft feel. And that's what, I think that's what sort of differentiates our art, what Voyager created, and, a lot of the other anime style art in the space.
Yeah.
In my opinion, it's a big differentiation. But that looks like a shell right there. That looks, that's pretty crazy. I want this one. Can I get that one?
You can have this one. Yes. We'll airdrop this to you.
Oh, great. Awesome. Honorary.
Yeah, exactly.
So this is almost like shells of the future, guys. Like, we went into the future. We don't have any guns in the collection, do we?
Oh, you do.
Oh, we do?
You do. Multiple, especially
in the original collection?
Cyber, for sure.
Oh, they do have guns. Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of like they're few and far between, but there's definitely some let's just say artistic license that I've taken in some ways. And I think one of the great things about doing this collection is like, look, I can show you this token, but then this is what it's based off of.
Right.
So you can see it has this 6-shooter right here, right?
Yeah.
It's got this sort of like security, tactical SWAT vibe.
Yep.
Right. Yep. So, I mean, you see a lot of this like detailing on the shell and everything, and it feels a little bit militaristic, right? It's got this gray and orange, and it's got these light streaks. So basically what we're trying to do is like take the vibe of this token, the vibe of the entire like collection, and then we start to iterate versions of it that would still fit within the confines of what I think the artist envisioned and what maybe the Shellz universe could support. So you can see what I end up with is like multiple iterations of a single token. So if I go into a token like this one, and it's just sort of like, it's wild, right? It's got this hat, it's very specific, it's got the visor, it's got this like really kind of hyper tech shell, which almost feels a little bit like armor. And so then what we do is we start going through iterations where you can see that we're kind of encompassing the vibe, but also incorporating certain artistic styles that maybe are sort of like, let's just call it Shellz adjacent, but at the same time sort of push the envelope of what we might think these tokens can look like.
Wow.
And so you can see that you can see sort of how these are playing off of each other, but in a way that we've dialed in these AI prompts to specifically create sort of a more like narrow lane, like a codified vibe that again is purposely and intentionally Shellz oriented. And then
that's super cool.
Right, it just, these get crazy, and then it's just like, you can say, okay, well, this is obviously sort of, we've taken this imagery, we've specifically told the AI what we want recreated and in the way we want it recreated, and then we just go through iterations. Some of them just, are discarded out of hand. Other times the AI gets really creative depending on which prompts I give weight to or subtract.
Yeah.
And you can see that it can create certain vibes that you said, if you saw this token and then you saw this next to it, you'd be like, I understand, right? You're sort of
you could see what was pulled from it, and also, dude, it's really gnarly to understand that AI is able to really see this.
Yeah.
AI saw this.
Yep.
It saw this token. It saw what this character was wearing, and then came up with some new stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And I've worked very hard. Honestly, the first probably 15 to 20% of my workload was actually dialing in the prompts so that they were recreatable. And the prompts are actually very faction specific. They don't work one-to-one from ethereal to scavenger to cyber to Nara. There's the collection, the art is so disparate and so amazingly so that it just blows the AI's mind a little bit. Right. Where I have to really, really control the AI to say, hey, look, this is the lane you need to stay in, because some of the stuff that it does kind of glom onto or look at or recognize just sends it into some really wild and crazy kind of non-Shellz areas. And I think it's just because of the intricacy of the art, the beauty of the art, that it really is a lot for the AI even now to digest. So that's actually was one of the trickiest parts of beginning this whole process, was that I wasn't even making these tokens for the first, probably 15 to 20% of my workload. It was just trial and error iteration to dial in the look.
Oh, wow.
So then I could recreate, because I mean, of the 2,000 tokens we're doing just that are part of the general collection, maybe 730 of them or so are Nara, another 650 or so are cyber, and then the rest are. So I actually needed to replicate this process for cohesion purposes
3 times.
Yeah, and then do it 700 times in a row.
Right.
And so that I couldn't just
What did that feel like? Like, was it? Were you getting good stuff? Like,
sometimes it was like a little psychedelic in that. I think for me, being passionate about Shellz, I wasn't like an outside artist that came into Shellz and was tasked to do a job. I was Shellz passionate first.
Yeah. And
I think being able to sort of like have my sort of like visual space already be Shellz oriented, and then look at what was being output, then I'd be like, I would fuck with that, right? It's like that to me, I just felt like I was the right person for this specific job. So not being sort of like just an outsider, I think really allowed me to take my kind of expertise, or at least my interest in AI, and then really tailor that to be completely like Shellz adjacent. I mean, a lot of this stuff just, it ends up being kind of so like just kind of far out, but at the same time, we're incorporating certain artistic styles so that we can make sure that these feel Shellz adjacent without being necessarily like, this is exactly the way that token looks, just redone in a different way.
And it's interesting, like when we thought about this collection, one of my main things was like, this collection can be, like a storyboard or like ideation for the TV show that we're working on, right?
Yeah.
And, I think, the basis of a good TV show is character design. And listen, if we have an entire TV show and all of the characters look exactly the same, we did something wrong.
100%.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think the studio, plural, when they get this, or the Nice brothers or the animators in the future, when they see some of these things, when they see some of these characters that we, or primarily just Mike,
we
kind of was like, okay, this is the best of what the creative AI gave us.
Yeah.
They're going to have so much more stuff to work with, right? They're going to have, because listen, this character right here, like, it doesn't look like a Shellz. It's not a turtle. It's kind of like a human, but it looks like it could be walking down the street next to a Shellz, right? Yeah,
exactly.
And also, dude, I see this and I'm like, oh, there's some street style in there, right?
100%.
Dude, I'd take like a pink and blue jacket like that, right? Like, or maybe that backpack kind of looks dope.
Yes.
Right. And you see, like, even like down here, you have this little like logo, this like circle logo with a dash through it. Like, maybe that's something in the future, right? Or maybe any of this stuff is something. There's a Japanese letter on our headphones or on the helmet. I don't know what letter that is, but a Japanese, or maybe it's Mandarin.
Yeah.
Person might tell us what it is in the future. I'm not sure. I could see that happening totally.
There's no doubt with some of these tokens, it's like there's an expression of like very specific kanji that's like super Shellz oriented, right? It's like you have this one, and so it's like, okay, well, what is the AI going to do with that, right? What is it going to do? And it's like, you know, for someone who's like non-kanji, like, you know, adjacent, I'm just like, okay, well, this stuff looks like it's supposed to feel. But one of the things that I've like really wanted to do, and one of the things I am doing, and it's one of the reasons why I feel like this is like uniquely special to the AI generated art space, is that what I'm doing is with very specific tokens, I'm taking this into Photoshop. I'm taking this sort of random character out, and what I'm doing is I'm actually putting legit kanji on it in Photoshop.
Dope.
And then or like a Shellz Orb logo right here.
Right.
Because it's like the perfect place for it to be.
Because AI doesn't do that.
It won't do it at all. So I think to personalize this, I think a significant amount of the collection, it's one of the things I'm going through right now, is to take items just like you called out, just like this and just like this logo down here, and actually make them legitimately legible parts of the collection.
Okay. Here's the question.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have, you know, for a lot of these tokens, it seems like you have 4 iterations
plus
of each token. Are some of the tokens going to be GIFs, and they just slowly every 1 second,
you know what,
switches to the next version, switches to the next version, switches to the next version?
You know what, that is an amazing idea, because I have to tell you,
it's a big file of 3-frame GIF.
Man, this is such a good idea.
But at 2,000, for some of them, doesn't have to be all of them.
No, I know.
But you know, I think I'm like, you know, just a few of them, right?
I think it's a great idea, because honestly, there's
let's get some movement in there, just for some tokens.
We have to do it. You know why? Because like there are tears I'm shedding because I am leaving some of these on the cutting room floor.
Look at this. Look at this folder. Wow.
Like it's just, you know, I could just go anywhere randomly into the collection and just find ones where I'm just like, okay, like all of these are fascinating or interesting to some degree. And then I have to decide, I'm going to ditch 2 of these. Right? And it's just like, I go through the whole collection, and every time I get to somewhere, I'm just like, one of these has to go. Or like all of them have to go, except one. And sometimes I end up with, I'm not kidding, I'll end up with 10, 12 different iterations of some specific ones where the artwork has just lent itself to something like really kind of loco and interesting. And I'm just like, it's a piece of art.
And AI just came up with this.
Well, again, I have a very specific lane I wanted to get into. So this has been curated through incorporating other artistic styles, other artistic media.
Yeah.
So like watercolor, sumi-e, oil painting, like traditional like Japanese ink art, that I'm telling the AI, do not deviate out of this lane. So that everyone that comes up, I do multiple iterations so that I can end up with something as disparate as this, from this to this, based on the same token. And then at the end, I'm supposed to go through these and just be like, okay, well, I'm trying to balance the collection so that we get some of this like kind of really far out there stuff, but also at the same time kind of dial in the lanes of like what we have here.
Whoa. And by the way, like I've been paying attention to some of like the stuff that you've been dropping.
Good,
like,
yeah, great.
I haven't paid attention to all of the sneaks that you've been dropping into the Shellz server.
Yeah, okay.
Because I've been like, you know, sort of working on.
You're jamming. I get it.
Working on other things, and so to sit here, I'm literally seeing a lot of this work for the first time, and maybe you haven't shared half of this, but look at that, dude.
I know. I haven't.
Like that token right there. That, I mean, shit. You show that to the Nice brothers, they're going to be all over this shit.
Yeah.
They're literally going to be like, fuck, like, you know, that looks like a character. That looks like, you know, a hero adjacent character, right? Or like the kid that follows around Shinobi.
Yep.
You know, or sort of whatever, right? Like
100%. And a lot of this stuff ends up pulling from the lore.
That could be the character of a spin-off.
Oh yeah. No doubt about it.
Oh, that's super freaking cool. And flawless. There's not an error on it.
Right, exactly. You're not getting
Did you Photoshop this one, or is that straight out of AI?
This is straight out of AI.
Wow.
So basically, every token that you see here that represented, there have been 10 that didn't make the cut at all. Because again, you're talking about these AI errors and stuff.
Yeah.
There's some where it's just like, well, that's just too far afield. Like the AI just
or the arm doesn't even exist.
Exactly. So every one of these that you see, there's another 10 that the AI just fumbled the ball.
Gotta be kidding me.
And then we end up trying to take the ones where it's like, okay, you did a good job with this. Let's see if we can iterate this a little bit and come up with something interesting.
And you have 2 of them.
Yeah, exactly.
They're literally 2 that are almost exactly the same and flawless.
Mm-hmm.
We have, this moon sort of thing. And in the second one, there's like moon texture.
Yeah.
On
exactly. You can see like craters and whatever.
Yeah. Wow.
So sometimes I just go back and forth between the original token and I'm like, okay, you obviously can see what is happening here. We've got the lavender, we've got the purple, we've got the pony, we've got the gold filigree, we've got the katana. And so it's like, we've got the colorful armor and robes. So sort of like, how are we going to recreate that and what's going to be the closest? So you can see what the AI is trying to do here.
Yeah.
This is like, again, a very specific like style, and this is about as far wide as we go for representation. But then as soon as you land on something like this, like some of these, I just land on the right token, like right out the gate. I'm just like, well, that's the one. And then I don't have to make 10 more.
Sure. Yeah.
But then ones like this, you're sort of like, okay, well, that hits different. And then you're like, well, let's see how far we can push this specific style and look. And then,
And now, so once you get a token like this, is it just like per chance that you got this?
No.
Or is this like, maybe you like hit like a little bit of a different prompt?
This was all very intentional. This look will be recreated dozens and dozens of times in the collection.
Okay, cool.
And again, that was because the first like huge chunk of the work that I began doing was to prompting. So the wild disparity of prompts that I got at the beginning of this process was just all over the map, right?
Yeah.
So I started just sort of like, again, almost like art directing a little bit, where I'm just saying, no, that's not Shellz adjacent anymore. And even sometimes when I look at these tokens, I'm looking at this one here, I'm like, okay, that feels Shellz adjacent. But then I look at this one, I'm like, well, damn, that one feels more like a turtle, right? The shape of the face, the helmet, the eyes, it feels more Shellz to me. Even though this one is absolutely sick, this one I kind of like a little bit more, but then maybe you're sort of like, well, maybe the balance of it, the layout, some of the filigree, maybe this just feels more ornate, right? So again, you're sort of trying to take it in. You try not to be too myopic about it. You really want to sort of put yourself in the shoes of someone who sees this for the first time.
I mean, here's the interesting thing about this, right? I know, most collections have derivative collections, right?
Yeah.
Or successful collections.
Yeah.
But they all look exactly the same.
Right.
They're all like literal rip-offs of the original art.
For sure.
And I don't see any of this like there's no piece of a rip-off. Like,
right, exactly.
That character does not look like its origin character.
Right.
It's, inspired by.
That's 100% it.
And, I also think, which is super cool, from all I know, we're the first collection to do this.
There is no doubt that no one else has pushed the AI to the limits creatively to represent an existing collection to this degree. I mean, especially at this scale. I mean, we're doing 3,000 tokens, some of which are going to be completely unique.
Yeah.
One of ones, and then they'll all be one of ones, but some of them are completely unique. Like the artwork isn't even representative of a specific token. It's actually representative of a document which 2 people wrote, and inspires like the look of everything.
So how did that work? Like and by the way,
right?
What?
Yeah.
This guy is absolutely nuts.
He's nuts.
Like.
But you can see like how we're going from here to here, right? I mean, the colorways are the same.
The colorways are the same.
You get the blue, you get the red, you get the night sky, the dark background, you get the flowing robes and a little bit of the flames.
Yeah.
So it's like you're telling the AI, hey, here's what I see and here's what I want, kind of like almost in the same vein. And some of these really threw the AI for a loop. There were some tokens where I was like, I knew it was going to be like really laborious to try to get these recreated, because the AI was like, I'm sorry, you want a turtle and you want wings at the same time? It's like, no. It's like, this doesn't exist, so I'm going to have to make it up on the fly. And that's where kind of the limitations of the AI come into play, where you're almost trying to trick it, like, despite itself, so that it can like come up with something that's like at least, passable for what we're trying to do.
This is like Ryu right here. Like,
yeah, right?
Whoa. So you made a couple iterations of this one.
Couple iterations. When I land on something good, I kind of like say, okay, well, push yourself a little bit, and let's make some tweaks about like how this looks and see if we can land on something that maybe feels better.
It's funny, this one kind of almost looks like Azuki Unchained, right?
Yeah, for sure, right? It's like you got the white
eyes are sort of like their style.
Yeah, and then here you have one that's like got a little bit more reptilian iris there. You can see this really coming out, like the skull and like kind of this dragon looking
Breaking
thing.
Bad right there.
Yeah. So you can see that it went from here, well, again, with this like kind of cool filigree from the original token, but you can see what it's trying to do, like recreate like the headband and the red and the flames.
Yeah.
And so yeah, some of these it really nailed them down, and then other ones just sort of like experimenting with, when you're just sort of like getting kind of wild with things with different artistic styles, just to see where it'll take you.
Dude, AI is wild. All right, so we've seen some Shellz.
Yeah.
Now I know we got a bunch of non-Shellz characters in the collection. Can we give a little sneak peek of maybe some of the unfaction characters inside of the collection and what happened inside of the AI?
Yeah.
With them.
Yeah. So some of these we're going to call them works in progress. I think that one of the really crazy things about when I started this process was that I had to, and I told you this, I had to restart basically a third of the collection. Because what ended up happening was Midjourney was like, they updated it multiple times during this process.
Right.
And the quality of what I was getting on the back end no longer matched the quality of what I was getting on the front end. My initial, like kind of almost like a good month and a half to 2 months of work. And so we had to go back. And so some of the legendaries that I started with were some of that, like I began, and we all know this is from like a sneak, right?
Yeah.
Tracks.
I like this one.
Right. So it's pretty interesting. And then we can see sort of like some of the shortcomings. Like this is version 4.
Right.
So there's like this is sort of like some of the early iterations that I was like, okay, well, like how far are we going with some of this? But then you get some of these really wild like scenes, right? Where you're like, okay, how do you tell the AI to create a cyberpunk lizard who's basically doing like a 50-50 grind with their hoverboard off of a police car flying through the city streets? Right? So what's happened is some of these legendaries, and especially some of the unfactioned and the ones that these eggs are turning into, I have to create them in composite. So what I have to do is I have to create this element by itself, create the city and the correct angle by itself, and then bring in like the hoverboard lizard by itself. And then what I'll do is I'll color match everything and bring this into one scene.
Interesting.
Because the recreation of that scene is basically going to be sort of nigh impossible. Let's see, where is that specific one?
Orb Police.
Yeah. So this is such a cool token, but at the same time, it's sort of like, we're not going to get this happening in AI. There's just too many wildly disparate storylines, if you will. So that's the one way that we're going to construct it. But some of these other ones turned out remarkably. This one is going to be happening. But this has been a lot of fun to recreate. You can see that it has its own like sort of unique vibe.
Yeah.
This one, again, more on like the art adjacent tip, right? So rather than make it feel specifically Turtle/Shellz Orb, we want it to be its own unique standalone piece that has its own vibe that really kind of honors
that vibe. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this is another one that came out. And again, this is just
token zero,
right? So it's like we're starting off. It's like, well, what am I going to do? What can I do with this token that's better than this, or at least honors it? And this is so extremely beautiful. It's literally perfect for what it is. How do we recreate something that is this incredible? And using just AI to do it and just help AI understand. The amount of love that you see in this image is like, how do you tell a computer to recreate this? So, we start the process by kind of going through this, and you just realize a lot of stuff just like just stays on the cutting room floor. And then sometimes you just abandon ship and you just come back to it, as the process goes.
Electrics.
Yeah, right. So she's like,
AI didn't mind her.
No, so it's like, okay, well, how turtley do we make her, or how sort of?
Whoa, and it's like, okay, so I was having some conversations. One of my friends, she worked at DC.
Yeah.
DC Comics, yeah. Right? And it got absorbed by Warner Brothers or whatever it was, and their big IP is Batman.
Yeah.
And you think about all the characters inside of Batman, and then you also think about, the evolution of all those characters. And it's like, I'm sitting here and I'm looking, I'm like, oh, here's where we started with this Electrics character, right?
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden she starts to get evolved.
Yeah.
Right? And it's like, oh, here is her. And I know that the studios are going to look at this shit and they're going to be like, oh, fuck, that's what it could look like?
Exactly. Yeah.
You imagine, like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, right?
Yeah.
What's Splinter going to look like this year? What's Shredder going to look like this year? And you never know. Every new movie, the artists reimagine and redo it, just like the Batmobile, right?
Totally.
Every movie, it's a new Batmobile.
Yeah.
James Bond, even, right? New car, right? It's new Aston Martin or a new
totally.
Whatever he's driving, or like new bombs or new flamethrowers or whatever it is. And so it's super cool to see that, because I just imagine, utilizing this imagery in the pitch. I was just at, lunch with Jamie and Jason Neese, like just 2 days ago, and we're talking about how we're going to be pitching this show to the networks. And I think here is how we show them, like, hey, this goes beyond this original 2D art, which is dope.
Yeah.
Right? There is a future for this in video games and in different things. Absolutely. Right? And it doesn't have to just look like the original art. It can be evolutions of it, right?
Yeah.
And we can utilize and leverage AI to help us get there.
100%.
Right?
Yeah.
To make a derivative quicker and faster. Like, we didn't spend 6 months working on this just for it to be an NFT.
100%. Yeah.
This had to be a signia of where we can go.
Yeah.
Right? And where we can push this intellectual property.
Yeah. I think, honestly, the guidance of the team and the involvement of the Neese brothers has really made me feel like, look, if I had to create a giant 3,000 piece mood board for a series or movie treatment, what would that look like? And every token that I finish, I'm like, does this fit with that vision? And I think that's 100% the way to go, because this should be honorary, but also informative, and then also future forward, basically.
Yeah.
And so it's been a really cool process. I mean, here I have some of these new ones where it's like, I haven't even tackled these yet. As these get revealed and sneaked, it's just sort of like, this is like a brand new process. I mean, this, like,
Jordan right there.
Totally, right? It's like, how am I going to tell the AI to do this? Right? It's so imaginative. It literally is. This is why we cannot replace human imagination yet. We can augment it with this, right? This is able to be sort of like a journey that you can go on with the AI and with the iterations. But as far as like even the conceptualization of this, everything that's involved in this one single image, there's such a story here. And it was something that Jordan and I talked about too, just because he wanted to have this like this character here, this fallen hero.
All right, walk me through this. Can we do this one right now?
We can't. Oh, sorry. We can start it, but you'll have to see the process of me trying to recreate each individual element, because I'm not going to get like demon ram, beast lion, like basically this griffin type, like chimera with the snake, then a fallen like sort of angelic turtle hero with the, so it's like the process would be I'm going to create each of these images separately and then composite them in Photoshop.
Yeah.
But if you wanted to do one of these ones where the AI can help us kick something out, I would be thrilled to do that.
Yeah, let's do something.
Like, yeah, I mean, any one of these, like some of these just turned out fantastic. Like you would think this is crazy. How will the AI ever like even come close to approximating this? And you can see that it has this like, once you start working with the prompts, you can see that the interpretation of it can actually...
Yeah, that's pretty darn good right there.
Right, you're going to get pretty close. Some of these...
Look at this one.
It's like super abstract, right? This is like... It's like, but how am I going to recreate that? And it's like, if you work with the prompts, you can get to a place where...
I like this one. I saw this one.
Yeah.
Right? And that... And it's like, oh shit, it's a human in space.
Yeah.
Floating.
Yeah.
And holy moly, like, that's her.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, going through this process has been awesome. And some of these are going to evolve and get even better. And you can sort of see where these are coming from a little bit, right? And it's got these notions of this. But man, there's like, again, so much happening here with the zoom and this sort of like really comic style feel with the lines. The fact that he's pointing the gun right at you is sort of like, this is difficult to recreate in AI, especially with this like shady shadow character.
Right.
Like maybe it's like a Nostablast character coming in from the... So, I mean, a lot of this has been really fascinating to see how the AI can even possibly handle this. And then a lot of it has been even my sort of like reinterpretation of what I had envisioned from the beginning of this, and then getting into what was happening and then sort of being swept along by what the AI could or couldn't do. You know, some of these are they're sort of like basic and representative that it's sort of like, okay, well, we should have evolved these tokens rather than, and you can see this is version 4. This is one of those version 4s that we started at the beginning with, where it's just, it's there, but it's not anywhere close to the intensity, the quality, the depth, and the expression of what the original collection is. Oh, here I can kind of give you a little, like, so here's this one, right? It's like you've got this bull whose nose is missing, right? It's like, so like the bull has got his head down, ready to charge. A tiger in traditional, like, kind of like Asian garb with this giant broadsword in his back, smoking a pipe in this crazy environment. It was like, what is this environment? It's like, I don't know, the gates of ethereal hell or something.
Yeah.
And so what we're doing now is like, okay, well, we can't recreate that scene, but it's like, what we can recreate? Because I mean, I can get the bull, but I'm not going to get a tiger smoking on top of it at the same time. The AI is going to be like, what are you talking about? So sort of like now we're trying to build multiple levels of this to sort of like merge them together in post.
Oh, that's dope.
These ones turned out great. I had a whole series of these, and honestly, I may revisit it as I go through the legendaries again, just because this was such a game changer, where you have these like Titanic looking creatures that are just so much larger than life. It opened up like a whole like kind of world of possibilities.
Right.
And then some of these are just, they're so specifically kind of, you know, they just capture the vibe so well. It's like, you'll understand it from beginning to end.
Oh my God, so cool.
But yeah, I mean, again, here's another one where it's just like, this token is so cool, but it's like, how do I want to represent it? Do I want to represent it like in this sort of like three-dimensional, like almost physically real way? Or am I trying to like tell a different story by like just having it just illustrated in a different manner?
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd love to tackle one with you. Like we can run some cybers, we can run some ethereals. I can walk you through like the Photoshop process. And
yeah, walk me through an ethereal. Let's try an ethereal. All these crazy guys.
Okay, so here.
These are the baby shells.
Yeah, these are the baby ethereals.
The baby ethereals. Wow. It's like a collection all to its own.
Well, I think these are one of the things that we talked about being special. I mean, these are ones that we could simply just throw into the collection as some of the most unique and rare ones.
Wow.
I think they're beautiful. I fell in love with like every single one of them.
Wow.
They just really captured the vibe of what I've always like kind of experienced with ethereal, but just took it to a whole nother level. And not only the expression of the ethereal traits, but also just the feeling of the reality, and then also kind of the beauty of the baby aspect of it.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with any of this, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
So I could make these all day. I could just spend a month making these. I probably have like 80 of them in here now, and I probably looked at like 300 that I did and just ended up keeping the ones I want to make more as I keep going, just to like make sure that the quality of the top end up being what we want.
I mean, talk about just cool and cute. It reminds me of like Pokemon, right? Like, like just like little creatures. Now, when you think of this in terms of a show or something, like here's the kids spin-off.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Imagine, like some kids show being made up of like little creatures like this, or imagine doing a live action sort of flick, and here's what the kids look like.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I think it's great. This is just wonderful.
Yeah, these are a lot of fun to do. Like I said, I made a first pass at it, but I'll definitely going to revisit this and like kind of run some more, so we end up with a good quiver full of these amazing little guys. But yeah, let's just make an ethereal. So here's like a bunch of the ethereals that I did for the part of the collection where we went ahead and did 1/3 of every token minted on the OpenSea drop between 8,000 and 9,000.
Right.
So, and you can see just the multiple iterations where we're just going to go through and we're going to curate these based on.
Holy moly.
Right. So you can see that we're incorporating certain artistic styles and kind of varying the levels of like something that's like more artistic and painterly and almost like illustrative or like concept art. And then stuff that's like, again, getting onto closer to photorealistic with, again, like that depth of field and kind of varying between like close up and then like wider shots. And just kind of letting the AI run as like wild as it wants to.
Wow.
Crazy, right?
Super nuts.
But yeah, let's just do one together. So basically, here is my prompt sheet. This is like basically a month's worth of work boiled down into one.
Do we want to show this to them or no?
Maybe not yet.
Okay.
But I would be stoked to release this later on, especially like the Only Lords or Diamond or something.
Yeah.
So it's like, because this lays out exactly kind of like the lane that this whole collection is based off of.
Right.
So I've like basically nailed it down so that the computer doesn't run amok when we do this. So here's our ethereal prompt. And this took a lot of coming up to, but this is it right here. I start by bringing in the token itself so that the AI can kind of get a grip on it. And then once I've done that, I begin the process in Midjourney of starting with my base prompt. Okay. Now the base prompt is going to give me the foundation of what I want to build, but since it's ethereal, you know, scavenger, cyber, Nara, whatever is different, I now have to add kind of like the things I want in there.
Okay.
So what I'll do is I'll give it sort of like a skin prompt, right? So we'll just go sort of based on like what this looks like. So maybe it's sort of like bulbous, purple, low poly crystal skin, right? So kind of just encompassing that. This I want to be a base prompt, but then I'll add something in for like the background, and maybe I'll do like add a little depth of field prompt to it. And then you know, let's just sort of say like sea foam green zoom light streak background. And then so we'll start cycling through this. So I'll copy this prompt because I kind of want to do it, and then I'll start it working, and I'll just take this prompt and I can start pasting it for multiple iterations. And then if I want to like change something, what I can do is I can go change sort of like the artist seed to sort of say, look, sort of like embrace this person's style. Where again, it's not recreating art necessarily as much as it is sort of like making variations. And then if I did want to settle on something like this, I can actually adjust the image weight. So I can say, I can go to something like 2 and then say, all right, pay attention to the image like 1.5 weight, pay the image like 1, and then maybe I'll do like 0.5.
What's the highest weight?
2. 2 will be like the maximum weight. It's like you're telling it at the end of all of this, pay very close attention to the picture. Now, because the picture is an illustration, the closer you get to the image weight, it will create an illustration. It won't give you a photorealistic version of this because you said pay attention to not only the composition of the image that I told you, pay attention to the media, the style, and the coloring. So somewhere in the middle of all that ends up being kind of the magic of what you want. And then you'll see that some of these just end up sort of just way out of pocket, and other ones end up being very interesting. So I always have the token up here on my other screen so that I can kind of like do a comparison. I'd say one of these is kind of close, right? One of these is a maybe, but again, almost like photorealistic, right?
Yeah.
But still, I would consider this as a possibility, so maybe I'll just upscale that one, but I don't want to mess with it anymore. What I'll do is I'll just upscale it so that it's available to me.
Right.
And then come in through here and I'll just look at these. Again, I gave turtle a little bit more weight, but I can give turtle less weight.
Right. And one of the interesting things that I notice, you know, sitting here and watching you work is you utilize the keyboard and you're really quick.
It ends up being like a video game. Or
like you're running amok on this keyboard, like it's a tool, right? And
yeah.
You know, I was a DJ for 20 some odd years.
Oh yeah.
And I remember I had this opener who hung out in the booth with me after he was done once, and he goes, "Dude, you don't even look at the CDJs while you're mixing." And I go, "No.
Yeah.
You don't need to look at them. They're tools."
Yeah.
You know, it's just like a hammer. If a carpenter looked at his hammer all the time,
yep,
it'd just be bizarre. you know,
exactly.
Like he'd never hit the nail.
No, you wouldn't.
You know, you just got to know that it's going there.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, so I've done this, like, I want to say I've done this the better part of maybe 20,000 times plus. like
Wow.
type something in and then described and kind of like massage things. I've probably gone through this process about 20,000 times now. Maybe it's probably more, but that's a good baseline. So I'm looking at these and maybe like I want to start with the baseline of like, look, make sure these are sort of turtle obvious, right? And it's like if I can nail something down like that's that way, then maybe this will work. And you can see we got some nice tight ones. But then maybe I say, well, look, you did okay with that. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the weight off of this. I'm just going to give you just do turtle, right? Don't do anything else. I'm going to take the image weight down to like maybe 0.75 again. And then what I'll do is I'll just kind of like go through the same process where I'll just go ahead and change up some of the image weight prompts. Maybe I'll go down to 0.5 and just see how it does with turtle not being as prevalent in the prompt. So I'll get more of the other words giving balance. So what you'll see is something that's still maybe, again, on its way to being a turtle, but now these weights, these words now have equal weight. So we'll let it cook a little bit. And I think it's good to sort of get ahead of the AI, like while it's working, because then I can sort of start catching up as I curate, right? I can look at this and like really give it the once over and see, okay.
Dude, this is just absolutely insane. I just wonder like the amount, like what's the amount of compute power that we used in creating this collection?
Oh yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, there's a quantifiable amount. There's no doubt about it.
And you just pay $20 a month.
So this is, I got the Pro one, and I think the Pro one is now $45 a month, maybe.
Okay.
Something like that. It's not ridiculous. And that gives you 30, what they call fast hours, which means priority on the server to kick your stuff out. But if you pay just the basic amount, you get what's called relaxed hours. And if you're patient enough, you can just set the AI working and you get it for free. I mean, for me, it was imperative that I kind of work quickly and kind of get through the process.
Right. Well, I mean, 40 is not.
Yeah.
$40 a month for something that you're actually really using, like you know, what's a video game cost these days?
Yeah,
$60
easily.
Right.
So a lot of what we've done with this collection is literally helping it along figure out like what do you do with a turtle?
Yeah.
Right. Because like there's paths that it tries to go down. It's like, okay, there's some foundational aspects of human culture where there's a turtle standing up with a katana sword. It's like, well, what is that? And it's like, well, it's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, right? It's like that sort of like that exists. So it's like, let me just borrow that since I've been trained on it and I know it. This is what it is. And so we'll just give that to you, right? Because you want a turtle standing up with a sword. So you have to actually sort of steer it away from that with sort of like very specific prompts. And you can see the kind of the trouble we get into. To be honest, the more simple illustrative styles are the ones that are the hardest to recreate, especially with like very simple line work, very graphic feel.
Really?
Yeah, those actually, the AI always wants to put on the bells and whistles, always. It'll always just sort of get over dramatic with everything. So it's actually dialing things back a little bit. I've started working on, and I kind of like, was like, well, what would it look like if I made like a coloring book?
Right.
So sort of like.
It's a coloring book with AI.
Right. So you can see, you recognize some of these tokens, right? Mm-hmm. Where I'm just sort of like, okay, is this possible? Could I like make something that was like that? Make something that's coloring book, very specific, simple line work, but graphic enough that it's like feels kid oriented, but then also enough color to fill in. And so this is just an experiment to see where could we go with this and if that was even possible.
Wow.
And it looks like it could do it. I mean,
dude, we need this for the pitch.
Let's make it happen.
We need this. I mean, even just these 5 images.
Yeah.
Like, because, you know, the whole idea is to grow this brand, right?
Yeah.
And we don't need to grow this brand and have it look exactly the same forever, right?
Right.
We need to grow this brand and show that it has a breadth and a depth, right? Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles right now, by the way, the worst version of it is on Nickelodeon.
Yeah.
It's a real children's show, right? It's like kids, right?
Yeah.
That looks like Kim Possible or like, you know, whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
And that's how I think we expand this universe. Is the IP doesn't have to look exactly the same.
Yeah, I agree.
Right? I think we win here if we tell a story that can be told over and over again.
Yes.
Right? That can keep being told, that can keep being explored, right? If we create, 5 or 6 characters that just can blow people away, right? Can carry people along and, listen, shit, if we get lucky enough, we'll get some good writers in there and they'll build some cool stuff, right? Jamie and Jason East, they're putting us on a nice path forward. But, if this show becomes something, we'll have 10, 15, 20 people writing about it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And all we got to do is spark a couple that really go off on tangents and really get it and nail it. And then the studios see a bunch of opportunity and money in it, and we're off to the races.
Well, there's no doubt that, like, again, just from my own kind of industry background, that this is like what I considered to be the jumping off point. I was like, well, if we're going to build something and we're going to go from, A to Z, then there should be a foundation that someone can always point to something within the AI collection and be like, look at the possibilities.
Yeah.
And so I think the fact that, like, the Nice brothers responded positively to a lot of the sneaks that I've been dropping here and there, it felt good because I felt like, okay, if this is inspiring them, which was sort of, it's inspired by them, and then the results of their own creation is inspiring them again. I feel like that's elevating the process and the elements in and of itself. So
it's getting somewhere.
It's getting somewhere. Like it thinks about it, and this is why I do multiple prompts at the same time. This is why I'll just blast through them, because while it thinks, I can always open this up, curate this, and say, okay, this is actually pretty close to what I wanted, and I love this style, and I love this. It feels illustrative without being too like crazy. I love the fact that this has 2 swords in his hand. I like the layout of this with this like light behind it and this sort of like creeping, the creeping geology of this landscape.
Bro, you got Pokemon Go on your phone?
I do. Look,
he's got his phone right there, and he's literally about to go like, ding, ding, ding.
It's Pokemon Go is one of those interesting things where it's like I transitioned from like adulthood into fatherhood, like playing Pokemon Go and always being like interested in Pokemon, and then like having kids. So it was like it kept the habit alive when my kids were old enough to like start flinging Pokeballs at stuff on like their iPads and phones. So there was no doubt that like eventually it existed, and once you find something in common with your kids, you stick with it.
yeah, sure, why not? Keep going.
Exactly.
Keep going with that one.
Yeah, and I can like once we make these, this is where the process like switches over to creating these in Photoshop, and I think that to me is a very important part of the process, because I think it really personalizes the collection.
Yeah.
And makes it not feel like super like disjointed. And there's opportunities to create like certain.
So sick, by the way. So freaking sick. And you could see like the AI pulled inspiration from, Star Wars and all of these like superhero science fiction movies and whatnot, and created something that could end up in a new piece of space.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, look at this. Holy moly. Wow.
And as I go through the collection curating, I'm always looking for opportunities to do something like interesting, to again like really personalize it and make it feel like, okay, this belongs somewhere, and that it's intentional, that it feels intentional. Because I think if you just let this all be as random as it possibly could be, then maybe it loses a little bit of like how special it could be. And then with Photoshop, some of the new AI tools that are integrated into Photoshop beta, it's like the work is incredibly simple and also incredibly powerful. Like you can just be scooting along and really kind of like capture your vision within moments. And if the AI or the process steers you wrong, you just recorrect it and just kind of like get back to it. I mean, some of these like shells themselves are so wild that the computer is just sort of like, what should I do? And just like kind of.
So now, okay, so that looks really like the token.
Mm-hmm.
So would that be like a weight 2.0?
No. So this is interesting. So this style where it gets sort of like it's going on to like manga/anime, that's a very specific prompt where I tell it, okay, do this. And what it does is it tries to copy this, but instead of tweaking it, and it's great that these start off as illustrations because it does much, much better with illustrations than it does even real pictures. It starts from here, and it instead of getting wildly adventurous with the word prompts, it gets more wildly adventurous in a specific lane that has been programmed by the team at Midjourney to sort of, hey, stay inside this lane and do this very, very specific thing and do it well. And that's its own prompt, and it's a very powerful prompt. In fact, what's been great about doing this collection is that a lot of like the freedom that I have to create these more like three-dimensional looking shells is basically bumper lanes, like when you're rolling a bowling ball and you're just like not that good at it. It keeps it from going in the gutter so that my process ends up being basically backstopped by the ability to sort of lean on this very specific look.
Wow.
So that we never have to run across a token where there's something we simply can't keep shells adjacent.
Dude, I mean, like, that's just so freaking cool.
It is.
Right? It's straight out of Blade Runner, Johnny Mnemonic.
Absolutely.
Like, Aliens versus Predator, right? Like,
yeah.
It embodies so many pieces of, or so many of the factors that we put into the Shellz Orb collection, right?
Absolutely.
And so many of the different things.
Yeah. So, I mean, let's pop this one open in Photoshop and just see what we can do with it. All right. So we'll get this guy into Photoshop and then see what we can do to like prep it for basically tokenization. Okay, first thing I do, so far AI is only kicking stuff out at very low resolutions. Like we're talking like 1 megapixel.
Right.
So the first thing I do in Photoshop is I'm going to take this from the 1 megapixel basically up to 4K. I kind of have these settings dialed in. A lot of the new Photoshop upscale actually works really well, and the quality is still pretty well maintained. And so I'm pretty happy with that. And then there's like the personalization stuff we can do, but one of the other things that I like to do, and again, I'm taking sort of a page from the original Shellz Orb playbook, where I'm going to create noise, like just grain. So basically, I'll dial this up. I usually use the Gaussian monochromatic. My settings are usually overlay, and then around 10%.
Yeah, that's about right.
So you can see this is sort of like what you end up getting. We can dial the grain up, but then sometimes I feel like you kind of lose a little bit of the general vibe. But that's kind of like long and short of it. And then we do the cool stuff like this element right here. Maybe we're not pleased with it. And this is where some of the stuff that used to take kind of like forever to do, we can kind of do in a moment with this like new generative fill. So it knows that it's all purple around here. So what it'll do is it'll actually construct, I think I missed a little bit here, but it'll construct a patch that basically does what I could have done with like, with this. So like instead of me coming in here with like this, like the brush tool, right? Because I'll come with the brush, I'll kind of go in here, but you can see what I'm losing is some of the initial grain from the original image. So it's there and it works, but what the AI can do for the most part very well is actually kind of like take the existing pixels around it, think about it. And what it does is it's great because it gives you a non-destructive patch. So instead of like destroying the underlying artwork, it'll just give you like a cover, and then it'll actually give you multiple iterations of it. And so you can see that's like, okay, I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
And because we remove that, maybe we want to replace it with something else. So one of the things is I've started building like this library of imagery and kanji and numbers so that I can actually pull from here. You can see here what I've done is I've like pulled down some kanji that I like that feels tech, right? So this feels a little bit more. And then these are some of the words that I thought would be interesting to have, like sun, big, year, middle, human, book, moon, long life, east, to go, time, city, power, stand, capital, direction, heart, nation, real, whole, peaceful, way, mind. And so, I mean, I don't know, maybe this guy feels like city. So we decided this guy felt like a city guy. So we'll just, again, copy this city kanji, paste it into our Photoshop as a smart object, and then kind of do some manipulative work here so that we can make this feel like it's integrated into the helmet. Maybe scale it down a little bit. And then, you know, maybe make it match up with that blue element. Bring the saturation up, lighten this up a little bit. That's pretty good. Give it a little glow. And that's okay. And then, you know, we can also mess around with like this sleeve right here. Maybe we want to do something that's like very, very specific, where it's not like necessarily Shellz adjacent, but what we're doing is we're trying to add some very specific continuity throughout the whole collection.
Yeah.
And I think this was inspired by some of the stuff we originally did pre-OpenSea Mint, where we made some of those tokens where we like used OpenSea logos.
Oh yeah.
And we thought about like
the OpenSea ATM.
Yeah, exactly. So I was like, okay, well, this is a good idea. And so here we had a nice version of the generative fill here where we got to have this. Did a pretty good job. Got rid of that kanji there. And then what we can do is bring in this other sort of like collection where maybe we want to do something like we could put the Shellz Orb icon there, or we could do like the Ethereum logo on the sleeve. Or like let's just do a Shellz Orb one. So I'll just grab that, drag it in nice and big. Because this is definitely at an angle, so we'll do that, and then, you know, we can make it again closer to this other color.
Do you use colorize or overlay?
Sometimes, yeah. Like if I want to feel like
you could match that exact color.
Yeah, sometimes I'll do that. Other times I like to sort of like explore it, because every once in a while I'll come across something that feels like it pops more.
Mm-hmm.
Or I'll actually use like I'll pull it back a little bit so that it feels like it sits in here a little bit better.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely exploratory. So now we have a token that's, has a little bit of personality to it, right? Where it's not, this is a very specific kanji character that's legit. This is a very specific insignia.
Mm-hmm.
And then we can add back on our grain. And this is about what a finalized token would look like. The kind of icing on the cake is all of these gems we have based on the rarity. So I would take like whichever rarity gem this one ends up being, which I haven't quite nailed down yet, but I bring that in.
Oh, I love that. Then boom, it just snaps right into place.
It snaps right here, and it belongs here, and each one of them will have its rarity in the bottom right. Probably still below the grain level. I think that still works best. Yeah. And then that would be that. We'd call that one done. And not all of them are going to get this specific treatment, but this is the process that we're going through with a significant percentage of them, so that there is that sort of thread with what we have in the original collection through here, where people are wearing banners or clothing that has the orb icon, and then we can add like the Ethereum icon and stuff like that. Should still be present, I think, in a lot of this. So
absolutely,
yeah, I think it's a great way to sort of like kind of still pay homage to the original collection.
Hell yeah, amazing.
Save it, PSD.
Saved PSD. There you go. Was there anything else you want to show us, or?
Yeah, I mean, there's always more to go. I mean, right now, building out these concepts where all of this is like, again, the hyper realistic versions.
Holy moly!
Of these. I'd love to show you like some of these tokens that we're doing based on the Nice Brothers document. This has been a real adventure as we go through like basically building the conceptual like framework for what they envisioned, but in a very like photorealistic / cinematic way. Part of the trick is like accomplishing this in a 1:1 aspect ratio. Stuff feels more cinematic when it's like widescreen. So a lot of the process has been like kind of fitting the bill with what ends up being square iconography. But more of this, like as it comes through the document and everything else that they've envisioned, creating these has become a little bit more simple, and then taking inspiration from the document and then kind of basically disseminating that throughout what would be a global event has been fun.
Dude, that's nuts. The pyramid like flaming from beneath it.
Yeah, totally.
What?
So yeah, this has been really interesting to recreate. And again, all of this is the genesis of this is completely from the Nice document, right? It's not it's not like it's token adjacent anymore. So a lot of this is my visual interpretation with the help of AI to what the document means or like expresses. So again, this is basically chronological in some ways, just following along the document, and then sort of expressing like what this would look like.
Yeah, dude, I love the little ATM machines. Oh my God, they're some of my favorites.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, it feels like, all of a sudden it feels very environmental and very like real all of a sudden.
Yeah.
It's gritty, like it's dirty, but then also like you get shots like this, which actually feel like very earthy, earthbound, and kind of almost very honest.
Oh, whoa. Yeah, that's... It's amazing. So now if you wanted to take one of these bad boys and make them widescreen in Photoshop, is the new generative fill, is it that good?
It's that good. It really is that good.
Can we make this one widescreen?
Absolutely.
Oh my God. If you're able to do this.
Yeah. We can absolutely do it.
I am going to be absolutely amazed because literally like something so complicated has never been able to like for Photoshop to do something and have it like look good. I'm going to be blown away if this looks good.
So it's completely game changing. And I'm going to tell you that Photoshop, it's so game changing that Midjourney copied Photoshop. They just rolled out an update, I'm not kidding, last week that said you can now zoom out on your generated images on Midjourney. So this process that we did, that we're about to do, we can pan. So I'm going to take this to 4K. And then what I'll do is I'll just take the canvas size. I'll go ahead and go on the full 3840 by 2160, which is our 4K. And we'll just do it from the middle. You can see that it didn't make anything, right? So what I can do is just take, it's crazy that it can do this. But what I'll do is I'll just like kind of make a marquee of this, like right here, and it'll say generate fill. And right here it asks me, hey, do you want to kind of tell me what's there? You want to like give me some suggestions, or do you want to just go ahead and do it?
Yeah.
So like I'll just say, you know what, go for it. Let's see what you can do. So think about it. Sometimes it takes anywhere from...
How fast is your computer?
It's fast. It's quite fast, but honestly, it's...
Nailed it!
Yeah, it's like, it's Photoshop.
Wow.
Calling on its AI that's doing the work. So then I'll just do the same thing over here. It's like, here, take some from here, fill this in for me, and just do it. I'm not even going to give you any suggestions.
Look, dude, it even like carries the...
It carries the sunset and everything.
And it changed the color.
Yeah.
So, like, it did a pretty good job on that rock.
So it did some interesting things here, right?
And it even came up with some stuff.
So here's the other option, right? So maybe you didn't like this one. And it's like, okay, try again. Or try again. Whoa, it's like you're having a feast.
Oh, yeah.
Right? But this feels more accurate, right? Doesn't this feel a little bit more honest? Right? You got this nice mountain in the back that it decided to finish off for you.
Well, wait, go back to this one. The
feast?
Wow. That's some Jay-Z shit right there.
Yeah, exactly. It feels... it's not... That's scavenger elite right there. So yeah, you can see what it did with this mountain. It gave us this little like snow cap, kind of like this like late spring snow melt. And there we are. Now we have a full cinematic, 16:9 image from a Midjourney. Remember, this is Midjourney now interpreted by the Photoshop AI to expand it, and it does so pretty honestly. And I'm just recreating this by hand or finding an image off a stock site or trying to recreate it even through Midjourney to recreate this again would be almost impossible. So the fact that we can go back in and kind of do this later is interesting. I mean, and you can see how this like becomes a little transparent. I mean, maybe we try to fix that a little bit.
Yeah.
Maybe we just say, okay, what can you do with this? Like, what's here. So I'm not even going to give it any prompts. I'll just say, look, just do your best. Like, this is like a fabric, and this is like a sunset with a mountain.
And this AI, does it need to be on the internet to do it?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think so, but I'm not 100% sure. I know that for a fact, it cut it off. But remember, it gives us multiple iterations.
Oh. So
this one did all right. It's still translucent a little bit, right? It thought this is translucent material.
Yeah.
I'm not hating on it. Maybe this is in the light, this is in the full light, and this is in the shade. So But yeah, this is something that I normally as an artist would have to go in and kind of like painstakingly paint in, basically.
Right.
Or go
right.
source a curtain fabric from a stock image or something, and then try to make color match it or whatever. And then if you don't like it, you can just hit the recycle button. Just try again, which is like one of the great powers of AI, is that you just try again. And AI will just do it and spit out another layer, again, completely non-destructive.
Or you can just write, or you could also in the prompt just write non-translucent fabric.
Oh, exactly. You could do something like that. So if I wanted to do this again, right? So I'll do this. I'll go ahead and turn off these layers. Oh, no, sorry, wrong layers. Yeah, turn off this layer, and then I'll hit generative fill, and I'll just write in like tent fabric hanging. Just hit generate and see how it does. Sometimes the more words you use, the more it like kind of like trips. Like maybe it would be better if I just used the word fabric.
Right.
Or like hanging fabric or curtain fabric or something. It's not bad. That one's better.
That's exact.
Yeah. Then this one even took in some of the embers in account, right?
Yeah.
The flame. And you know what? It kind of like hiccuped a little bit right there. Like you can see the mountain kind of like has a little bit of a blip. But if we come in here and go ahead and just rasterize this layer, since it's its own layer, we can actually kind of probably feather this in a little bit and kind of, right? So we just kind of like work with it until it feels a little bit better.
Yeah,
you know.
done.
So yeah, that's the power of what it does. And honestly, this wasn't available like 6 weeks ago. This is like my life changed dramatically, because even some of the work I was doing prior to this, I was doing what I was telling you, just like going in and painting stuff in, drawing it, sourcing other materials and trying to like make it work. And now here I am just basically tweaking a tool to visually match what we're trying to do. So yeah, it's incredibly powerful. And I think it's actually one of the reasons why the AI collection has taken a little bit, is just because the tools to do these kind of amazing things has now all of a sudden become available. Before, it would have been maybe time prohibitive, like completely time prohibitive for me to even fathom going through 1,000 tokens and giving it this kind of treatment. Now I'm like, wait, this is going to just take me minutes per token. Why wouldn't I do it now to elevate it to that level?
Right.
So it's not even about, it's actually the quality of the AI and the tools has actually created more work, because I think the inspiration from the original collection has set my kind of visual aesthetic at such a high bar. So it's kind of like, it feels almost mandatory to take the extra time to do this kind of stuff.
So crazy.
Dude.
Thanks, Mike.
You're welcome.
Thank you guys for watching.
Yeah.
Thank you for, I don't know, maybe buying, maybe getting an airdrop or something like that of the AI collection and supporting our boy Mike, aka Vorpal, and his wife and 4 children.
That's right. Got mouths to feed. Oh, jeez.
He's definitely got a lot of mouths running around here. But we'll see you guys in the next one. Cheers.
Yeah, guys. Peace.